In October of 1843, the literary genius Charles Dickens sat down to embark on what was, in its original intent, a cold, calculated business venture intended to offset impending financial losses. While his previous works, the Pickwick Papers and the Old Curiosity Shop, had risen to meteoric levels of sales and positive critical acclaim, other works like Barnaby, Rudge, and Martin Chuzzlewit had conversely registered numbers far less in magnitude than the author had originally expected. This left Dickens slightly bewildered and uncomfortable and somewhat compromised, as his business partners of the day were tightening the pressure on him to produce a palatable work, and one that would make it to press by that December. He had absolutely no idea how deep an emotional chord this little story would strike with the ordinary citizen. A simple story of redemption. Today, I would like to discuss what is arguably the most famous of all the works of Charles Dickens, A Christmas Carol, and a few of its cinematic offshoots, adaptations, permutations, and transmogrifications on box number 7. There are over 100 adaptations of Charles Dickens' classic story out there, to include movies, stage productions, and television adaptations. In 1901, a short version starring Daniel Smith started the cavalcade, continuing with a 1908 version starring Tom Ricketts, although no known copies exist today for some reason. In 1910, another short form was put forth starring Mac McDermott. This continued, and in 1913, 1914, and an adaptation called The Right to be Happy in 1916 also came along. That one also lost to time and the entropic stream of fate. 1923, 1928 produced two more, until 1935, when director Henry Edwards and lead role Seymour Hicks offered a full-length telling of the ghostly trifecta. Ditto for Reginald Owen's 1938 version, although lost versions came and went, and it was in 1951 when Alistair Sim put forth the first lingering version, the one you may find in the Walmart discount bin to this day with the cartoonish sort of iconography on the front. Speaking of which, cartoon versions have been made with Mr. Magoo. Foreign language versions have been made as well. In 1970 came a musical version simply called Scrooge, starring Albert Finney, and this one hit me as a kid, even though the principal song, or the thematic sort of take on it, with a song called I Like Life and Life Likes Me, it runs through my head 50 years later. The scene in which the door knocker comes to life scared me straight into the weeds and haunted me for years. Sanford and Son premiered an episode in which a tight-fisted Fred Sanford, played by Red Fox, gets himself a ghostly wake-up call. The $6 Million Man, starring Lee Majors, even had a goofy offshoot. WKRP in Cincinnati, which, by the way, mostly famous for their Thanksgiving episode. The turkey episode, never mind, another day. Anyway, they covered one, and Bugs Bunny even did an animated one, or I should say just a cartoon version, and then there was ultimately an animated one with Jim Carrey at the helm. In fact, the list is so diverse and ridiculous that there is no way to avoid the structural lesson of Ebenezer's threefold redemption, no matter how you've packed it or in what kind of show you've managed to put it in. Then, in 1992 came the best one of all. Henson and Company managed to corral the top-tier abilities of actor Michael Caine. The musical scoring done almost entirely by Mr. Paul Williams, a man whose brilliance is underrated at best and nearly forgotten to this day, to produce what was called A Muppet Christmas Carol. This was the first movie undertaken without the namesake Jim Henson directly, who died in May of 1990 and might have been alive when they started production, but nonetheless, his fingerprints were ultimately not on the film, but his spirit was. Part of the Muppet doctrine, by the way, was to make atrocious attempts to overshadow and upstage superstars that they were always partnered with. The Muppet Show, which was a televised series that came on weekly, managed to corral A-lister after A-lister after A-lister and get them to subject themselves to an unequaled mix of puppetry or muppetry with unrelenting histrionics. The celebrities understood this going in, and the contrast of worlds was always a joy to behold. Michael Caine was keenly aware of what he was signing on for, so much so that he realized that playing the principal character in a Muppet movie would be heightened by maintaining an absolute dedication to the central character. So much so that he told Brian Henson, quote, "I'm going to play this movie like I'm working with the Royal Shakespeare Company. I will never wink. I will never do anything Muppety. I'm going to play Scrooge as if it is an utterly dramatic role and there are no puppets around me," unquote. Henson replied, "Yes, bang on," which is apparently British for "just do it." And so he did. Caine's treatment was so masterful that even if he were not surrounded by Muppets, his portrayal is the ultimate, powerful, angry, contemplative, and ultimately repentant delivery. The movie is narrated by Charles Dickens, played by Gonzo, and his sidekick Rizzo the Rat, who provides many bountiful heaps of laugh-out-loud moments. Bob Cratchit is played by the ubiquitous Kermit, and this would be the first time he would be played without the soul of Jim Henson, and otherwise voiced by Steve Whitmire, who did a really fantastic job. Frank Oz takes on the role of the eternally irritating Miss Piggy, and also happens to be Cratchit's wife, and on it goes. When during the Ghost of Christmas Past sequence, Scrooge sings a song called When Love Is Gone. And in this particular scene, he is mourning the romantic could-have-beens from his youth. Apparently, the song was removed for the theatrical release when it originally came out. Well, I never saw it in the theaters. I had it given to me on VHS, and then I bought a mainline DVD that contained the song. So it was always a part of my DNA, and it was always an integral part of the film. Well, apparently, back when it was released in theaters, an editorial decision was made to remove it from theatrical release because it was too sophisticated for children and would bore them. The problem is, I raised my kids on the version that contained it and never knew otherwise. And this matters because the VHS and DVD versions all used an aspect ratio that is never even acceptable to this day, where lots of margin space is on the screen and the picture doesn't feel cinematic, and basically it's a landscape-oriented rectangle with no magic and lots of margins. And I always wish they would fix this, clean up the definitions, and make a Blu-ray version. Well, they did. And in 2012 or thereabouts, they produced a Blu-ray. Full bleed, cinematic aspect ratios, previously omitted peripheral scenery put back in, and way, way higher resolution. But the song, When Love Is Gone, missing. I wasn't happy about this, and I took to Amazon and I laid out the following review all those years ago. And yes, you can find it there somewhere. I hope you like it. Well, I've calmed down a bit since I wrote it. So here you go. When I first read the book, No Easy Day by Mark Owen, the infamous release that recounts the mission to kill Osama bin Laden, he particularly channeled a recurring theme in the life of many, a concept he called the good idea fairy. This quote-unquote fairy was the tendency for the passively uninvolved to suddenly involve themselves in a mission at the last minute. A mission that has already been tried, trued, calibrated, and they suddenly change the calculus, throwing everyone's game off and possibly ruining the entire mission, all in the name of progress. Well, it looks like that diminutive knave showed up at Henson Incorporated because they've gaffed the one movie I have actively anticipated on Blu-ray with one 3-minute omission. Somewhat distracted, I didn't even notice it as I brought it straight home and began watching it with my family, which for us is now a 13-year tradition since I first had it loaned to me on VHS in 1999. My 11-year-old, Clara, immediately said, "Dad, they took the song out." She then began to sing the melody, and I'm like, they sure did. I wonder why. Supposedly, the omission was made to accommodate kids. Mine noticed the problem like a noonday mugging in terms of one family anecdotal data. Mission failed. And wonder I do. Now my inner cynic says that there is now one more opportunity to capitalize on guys like me who will immediately buy a fixed version because the transfer to Blu-ray is immediately noticeable in its qualitative aspects. The 1080p ratios are perfect. The cinematic feel to this thing is fantastic. The sound has also come up a few notches too, possibly the best songs ever written for any one of their films. And the fact that this post-Jim Henson film is perhaps better than any film handled directly by Jim Henson is actually a testament to Henson himself. Despite the fact that his son was the directorial heir apparent and had never done so before, the sheer weight of trying to go to theater a mere 2 years after the death of Kermit's literal soul must have been daunting. Merely trying to compensate for the voice of a number of characters, not to mention the subtleties of expression and hand movements that will never be replaced, would have made many buckle and call it a day. But the standard, along with chronological proximity, guaranteed that Frank Oz and the crew would pour themselves into a legacy like never before. One can also see a contemplative tribute to Henson in The Falling Star, observed by Kermit when he's troubled about the world in general. This is why many will say this is the best Muppet movie of all time. At least I will. So why remove the song? The now omitted When Love Is Gone, written by Paul Williams, falls victim to an active decision to quote-unquote revert to an original cinematic state. But this makes no sense since very few actually saw it in the theaters, and every released video has included the song, which, by the way, is reprised at the end of the film after Scrooge's transformation, along with a lyrical one as well. The reprise now sits alone with no referential place to point back to. The song provides the romantic referential sadness inherent in Scrooge's past. Taking out the song is the equivalent to removing supercalifragilisticexpialidocious from Mary Poppins. One can only guess that, like I predict with Apple, the inherencies that made them great are but mere echoes, that their decompositional processes started when their true visionaries left us. And yet, I hold out hope for both. So 2 stars from me. I certainly hope that Brian Henson and crew will release an ameliorated version sometime with the same qualities galvanized into this one. It will immediately gain 5 stars from nearly all. And I keep hoping that some Easter egg hammered within the disc reveals a true version, but quite frankly, even if it does, I'm not inclined to accept entering a whimsical labyrinth to see it. Somebody, please, kill the good idea fairy. Thank you. End of review. So, if I don't have another episode up in time, I want to wish you all a Merry Christmas from box number 7.